Yeah.
My favorite.
It's Judd's Hockey Show.
It is Judd's Hockey Show. It's a Wednesday. It's Judd. It's Declan. And really on Wednesdays, we turn the show over more so to Jessi Pierce, who not only brings some looks to a show that, well, aside from Dex's mustache, desperately needs looks, but also brings knowledge. She is around the rink constantly. You can find her, of course, in the Bar Down Beauties podcast. You can also find her work, NHL.com. She covers the Wild and does an outstanding job there. And Jessi, I'm just going to turn it to you because you just got back from practice.
I did.
And you tweeted about this. Kirill Kaprizov back on the ice. What can you tell us about something that I'm sure will excite Wild fans to no end?
I mean, I know people were worried about ligaments and ankles. He hasn't missed a beat. He was wearing a non-contact jersey today at practice. It's his first practice with the group. He had skated with Andy Ness ahead of the game the other night. So he's progressing normally. They're trying to be patient. But even in this non-contact jersey, you guys, he was bumping. It's hard to hold him back. You can tell that he is raring to go. Dean Evason said they're going to continue to try to be patient with him. He will travel with the team to Pittsburgh when they face the Penguins tomorrow night. Very likely he will not play. They'll obviously evaluate after skate. Both him and Gustav Nyquist will skate with the group at morning skate. And I suppose if either one are ready, I don't see it happening. But Evason did say that there is potential for possibly at least one of them to be good to go when Minnesota comes back against St. Louis on Saturday, So yeah, I mean, he looked great. I joked, I asked Marc-Andre Fleury, how is Kaprizov's shot? And Fleury said he's slow. He's muffining shots out there. He's just terrible, when really, obviously, that's not the case. Again, he looks fantastic. He looks like the 97 that you all know and love. So good news is his return is imminent here, it looks like.
Well, that's fantastic. Where is, since you brought him up, Nyquist at, just as far as his recovery? Kind
of the same situation a little bit. I mean, obviously, Nyquist hasn't played since January, which is kind of the one question mark. He's been practicing. He's been skating with the group in that non-contact jersey. He's been traveling for longer than Kaprizov. But again, I think they're just making sure they're very patient. Dean did mention today that there's a possibility for him to jump into the lineup before the end of the regular season. They will see. They will continue to evaluate. I personally would love to see that. I would love to see what Gustav Nyquist could bring, especially because he's got to learn this whole new system a little bit with this team in gameplay, and he hasn't played a real game in months. So it'd be curious. I mean, Bill Guerin went out and got him for a reason. Why not see what he can do before playoffs come? But yeah, so I mean, they're just, again, trying to be incredibly patient with him to make sure that he is 110% good to go before slotting him in.
Looking at Nyquist, Jess, and now with Mason Shaw's unfortunate injury, and this is kind of what Judd was talking about with, hey, how are we going to fit this guy in the lineup? We did a couple combination episodes last week on that idea, and Judd said, hey, unfortunately how this usually happens is an injury opens things up, and unfortunately it's Mason Shaw's knee for like the fourth time, who's undergoing another ACL tear, sadly. Do you kind of see him? Is it just Nyquist for Shaw straight up? Is there more shuffling of the deck? How do you kind of see Nyquist now fitting in with Shaw's injury?
I mean, you're still going to need to bump some guys around, right? Because you've got Kirill Kaprizov coming back. Right now, I did like Brandon Duhaime on that fourth line with Ryan Reeves and Connor Dewar. Mm-hmm. He brings a lot of speed to that line. That line had been clicking tremendously with Mason Shaw. Again, such an unfortunate situation for that kid. You got to feel for him. But yeah, I mean, you're looking at another guy still needs to come out. I mean, Kaprizov, you know where he's going. He's going right back on that top line. You don't mess with that second. I mean, Gustav Nyquist comes in, it can't be a 1-for-1. It has to, he's going to have to, he can't just take Shaw's place. So we'll see. I mean, Sam Steele obviously will come out, but still one more body needs to go when both of those guys return. So it'll be good. As Dean Evason likes to say, it's a good problem to have, right, guys, that they have too many bodies. But you all know who I think should maybe sit. And I don't know.
Yeah. Good friend of yours. Incredible. Marcus Foligno so hurt that you've turned on him like this.
I know.
So what is, if, and again, it's a big if everybody stays healthy now going into game one of the playoffs, and let's say that Gustav Nyquist comes back and, plays a couple games and looks good. And certainly he brings some firepower this team could probably use. Does Sundqvist sit? Like, I'm not a huge fan of that because I like what he brings as far as the sandpaper goes. Mm-hmm. But I think, Jess, you brought up to me in the press box on Monday night, and you're right. Foligno and Sundqvist, and there's sort of a list of guys here who are a little bit redundant as far as because they're sandpaper guys, which I really like. But does he sit if Foligno's not going to sit?
I mean, it's worth a conversation. I think you're looking at a Connor Dewar or a Brandon Duhaime. I think Connor Dewar is probably first on the chopping block just because he is young. Sundqvist is older, has the experience. Duhaime even has a little bit more experience than that. So I think that's the way that Dean looks at it. You had mentioned players that are similar. I mean, you got Ryan Reeves, Foligno, Duhaime is scrappy enough, Hartman's scrappy enough, right? So, I mean, you have enough physical presence that you don't necessarily need all of that jumbled up with the skill. And Gustav Nyquist brings the skill. So, yeah, I mean, you certainly could opt out of one of your quote unquote tough guys in favor of a skill set like Gustav Nyquist could potentially bring. And yeah, Sundqvist kind of the same, but he's, you know what? I don't think he's getting as much notoriety as maybe he deserves. He's been quietly just playing the right kind of game, the right kind of complete game that you need. I mean, Marcus Johansson stepped in and has immediately clicked with Matt Boldy and gotten on the score sheet. So everybody's eyes are obviously on him. But I think Oskar Sundqvist has done a great job in his role as well. So I would say probably not him. I would lean toward, again, one of those younger guys in Dewar or Duhaime, just getting the short end of the stick, simple as can be. So we'll see what happens. But that would be my opinion if Dean could listen to me for once.
Yeah, it'd be great.
Go ahead.
Yeah, and with now Boldy still playing very, very well. I don't know about you, Jess, but I'm just so curious how both of that gels with Kirill Kaprizov coming back, right? Because Boldy's been basically your Superman since Kirill went down. Does he resort back to kind of being a streaky player that wasn't showing up on the stat sheet? Is this now a legit, kind of Batman and Robin 1-2 punch? Do you feel once Kirill comes back that Matt Boldy can still be lighting the lamp as much as he has over his absence?
I mean, why can't he be, right? There would be no real change to what his line is doing out there. There's no real change to the role that Matt Boldy has been playing all year long. I mean, you go back to February where he had that goalless drought and he wasn't producing and he was just trying. And then you look at this last month and it's like, boom, here he is. This is Matt Boldy. He can do XYZ and it's fantastic, but nothing changed then either. So nothing should change this way either, you would hope. I mean, he knows he can shoot. And I imagine Kirill Kaprizov is going to be like, guys, I can't do this all by myself again. And I mean, the team knows that, right? Everybody knows that. We harp on the secondary scoring all season long. And now that that's finally going, the hope and the ideal situation is Kirill Kaprizov comes back and just adds on to what he was already doing and adds on to Matt Boldy's. And you're finally getting the offensive production that you are going to need come playoff time.
And don't forget too, in the 6-game loss in the first round of the Blues last spring, it was Fiala who disappeared. So like that's the important thing, because Kaprizov still was fantastic, but Jessi, you're right, he can't do it by himself. And whoever they open against in the first round is going to do everything in their power to shut down 97. So that's the point, is like Boldy, there's going to be pressure there. Like he needs to, if not continue scoring like he's currently scoring, which is I think 13 goals in 12 games, which is nuts. That line is going to need to bring a regular scoring presence, because among the problems, and there were a few of them that we could go through from the Blues series a year ago, was that one. Like that secondary scoring just disappeared, and it's like, okay, it's the Kirill show. Well, that's not going to work. So it will be interesting to see as there's more pressure, and certainly the games tighten up because the playoffs change a lot. Right. It's going to be very interesting to see how much Boldy can continue at this pace, because teams are going to focus on him more. But I still think that no matter what happens, as long as Kirill is playing, he is going to be the primary focus. So a guy like Boldy absolutely has to score if you're going to get beyond that first round.
Well, I mean, yeah, and especially if Boldy is going up against, right now you're seeing him do this against most likely the opposition's top defensive pair, right? I mean, especially when they're on the road and that home team gets the last change, they're able to get the matchup that they want for Boldy. The same thing will happen. I mean, now that top defensive pair, when that team gets the matchup, is going against Kirill Kaprizov. So that should hopefully open up some things for Matt Boldy as well to continue to assert himself. I have no doubt. I mean, the confidence, but also the humbleness of Matt Boldy, I think just speaks volumes. I think he's just going to continue. He doesn't feel like he's changed anything in his game. From the outside, it certainly looks like he's shooting the puck a lot more, which is a big change.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, he needs to keep it going. And in fact, all the lines need to keep going. I think you have seen different contributions, again, whether it ends up on the score sheet or not, from all 4 lines so far in this little bit of hot streak that Minnesota has come into. And that's what you need. It sounds simple and it sounds like so duh, but truly you need to have all 4 lines rolling to be successful in the playoffs. And that goes back into your goaltender, which, guys, can I drop this hot news on you a little bit?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Dean Evson said he is willing to go with the tandem in the playoffs and not just name one goalie.
That's because that's what I told him to do. Yeah. I've been saying that for 2 weeks now. I've been saying that for 2 weeks. You know what? In fact, I just wrote a piece for Minnesota Hockey Magazine that should be posted today referencing the 2003 rotation of sorts.
Yeah.
It's that. This is the 2003 team. I keep telling people that. You got to listen to me, folks. This is Rolison and Manny. Mm-hmm. And in 2003 Colorado series, Manny plays, I think he played 2 games and they lost, or no, he played 3 games. They lost. Roley comes in, right? And they go back and forth. So yes, I think Dean, I think the lesson that he learned, because he screwed this up beyond belief last year, was you don't make this move too late.
Right.
Right. So yes, Dean, thank you.
No, I point blank had the opportunity to ask him today for a different story
for you.
NHL.com. And he's like, when, I had asked, I said, a lot of teams don't believe in that. When it comes to playoffs, they believe in riding their one goaltender, right? And that's just the way it has trended in the NHL, right or wrong. It just seems to be what happens. And certainly if someone's playing out of their mind, it's hard to not have them in net. But he's like, we believe it can work. We believe we've been doing it all year long. So it sounds like he's going to continue, or at least consider, having that rotation be a pretty regular situation. Think about how helpful that could be. It's so funny because it seems like such a foreign concept because, as I mentioned, teams don't do it anymore, especially come playoff time. So it seems weird to have a fresh goalie in there and just to throw the other team off and then to give Fleury a little bit of a rest, or to give Gus a little, all of it sounds really positive. So I'm hoping Dean sticks to that. Again, he had mentioned, obviously, if one of them gets going, that'll probably be the end of that. But yeah, I was super thrilled to hear that answer from Dean Evson, obviously, as I am the goaltending guru.
Your whisperer.
Jess, what is your gut telling you on that topic of the goalie rotation? Have you swayed? Is it Philip Gustafson's net for game 1? Is it Fleury's net for game 1? If the playoffs were to start today, who probably does get the opening nod?
If it's my call, I'm going Fleury game 1. And then I would honestly, no matter how Fleury does, I'd probably put in Gus in game 2 and just kind of make the comparison there. I mean, again, if Fleury's lights out, that's one thing. I don't anticipate because it's playoffs. That's hard to do. But I would still go Fleury game 1 just because he has that veteran playoff experience. Gus doesn't have that yet. And Gus is a confident goalie, a technical goalie, and a calm goalie. So I know him going into the playoffs isn't going to be intimidating by any stretch of the imagination. My gut instantly says you go Fleury first, not a slight to Gus at all. But then you have Gus come back for game 2. Again, like Judd said, rather than waiting and pulling what they did last year and putting them in game 5, I would, alternate, rotate it, see who plays better against that opposition too, whoever you get for the matchup.
Jessi Pierce, I'm looking at the line chart from the Golden Knights game. I think you just hit on what the lines are. Mm-hmm. So you said Dewar comes out, which I've been assuming would not be the case because he is the center and a good PK guy on that fourth line. But I think you hit it. So I think Dewar comes out. Duhaime, who I think can play, if I'm not mistaken, and has played center before.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not on a super regular basis. But anyway, how about Reeves, Duhaime, Foligno? Mm-hmm. Nyquist, I don't think there's no room in the top 6. You're not going to, unless you are going to demote Zuccarello, which we could talk about. Now Hartman's going to stay there. Zuccarello we can talk about, but anyway, he's going to stay with Kaprizov. So the third line, and this would require a right wing going to the left side. Some guys are okay with that. Some guys struggle a little bit more. But the third line, then, to your point, would be Gaudreau, Sundqvist, and Nyquist. that actually works. Like as long as somebody can play left wing, because there's just no room. I mean, who are you going to bump out for game one of the playoffs from those top six? I don't see a guy. Now, if Zuccarello continues to scuffle, the conversation can change. But I think you hit it. I think Dewar comes out, Duhaime goes to center, and then your guy, Foligno, you don't scratch him necessarily, but you do put him on that fourth line, and he can be a really good fourth line player.
I think so.
I think that works.
Yeah. I mean, that you hope that Foligno can keep up with some, because I think even Ryan Reeves moves really quick, a little bit quicker than Foligno. So I think that would be my one thing is make sure.
This poor guy's going to find out what you're saying. He's never going to talk to you again.
He is literally my favorite player too. I know. You
just said Revo moves quicker than him.
Kind of does sometimes.
He's going to have to go home and cry.
He can join you in the press box up there, Jessi. You guys can snack on popcorn and just watch him up there.
I mean, maybe that's it. That's really my secret motivation is just so Foligno can hang out with us in the press box. That's why I want to see him scratched. So who knows?
But that works, right, Declan?
Yeah, I would think that would work. The Nyquist, Gaudreau, Sundqvist one would be really interesting. I think Nyquist would be your more legit offensive threat. Does he bring enough defensive prowess, or can his line mates make up for his defensive, miscues, if you will, or lack of being a good defender? That's where I'd be curious, but I think that's probably the best bet of it, of Nyquist drawing in. To Judd's point, I don't think he's going to crack the top six. I haven't loved Zuccarello's game basically since Kirill has went down, but if you get Kirill back, those two have so much chemistry that you'd like to think that will be connected once again, and Zuccarello kind of finds his game a little bit more. That's probably the best bet of fitting Nyquist into the lineup.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree. And I'd try it out. I don't hate it by any stretch of the imagination, right? Like I don't hate it. I'm not sitting here being like, eee.
Well, he's going to play. Like he's going to get a chance to play, right? Like there's no way that they're just going to acquire him. And then if he can play, not play him.
Right.
Now, if he comes back and he's super rusty and doesn't play well, he certainly could be scratched. But I think that's because I've just been trying to figure out who do you take out. And I don't love Dewar coming out, but like your point about Dean, Jess, is 1,000% right. Like, Dean's first thought is not going to be what veteran can I bench. It's going to be what young whippersnapper can I take out. So that actually makes perfect sense. Okay, on the subject of Zuccarello, he scored 2 goals the first 2 games that Kaprizov went out. He hasn't scored a goal since. I thought he showed up a little bit more in Monday's game. Like I feel like I saw him more. But his performance during this, what's been for the most part a marvelous stretch, has been, in my opinion, incredibly underwhelming for a guy in the top 6 who more is expected from. And I know we talk about Kirill and Matt's magic, and Kirill coming back should help. I don't think that gives Zuccarello, though, Jessi, a pass on really how poorly he's played at times, including what I feel like is a way too many defensive zone mishandles of the puck and turnovers as well. If there's one thing that has really underwhelmed me starting in February, certainly into now, it's the play of Matt Zuccarello.
Yeah, I mean, this season kind of in general it wasn't last year, right? And you can say that for a number of players, of course, but something's off. And granted, when you went out and signed Matt Zuccarello, you were already getting him at kind of the tail end of his career. I hate to say this because this is my exact age, but he's 35, right? Which is kind of on
getting up there.
You
guys are getting up there.
Getting old. But no, I mean, I think when Kirill Kaprizov went out, the hope and the idea was that Matt Zuccarello is the next guy up. He's going to elevate this team. He's going to show everybody I'm not just Kirill's Robin to his Batman, right? But he's been just that. Matt Zuccarello, you're right, Judd. I think Monday he was really buzzing. You saw him much more not in just a bad way. But you're right. More often than not, it's not been good at all. So you hope Kirill can reignite whatever was there. But yeah, Matt Zuccarello just seems kind of off. Maybe it's because he's a new dad. Maybe that's kind of part of the problem, right? Wasn't that a joke a couple years ago that all these guys had babies and they all missed the playoffs that year, I think? So it could be that. But yeah, his game is just not what it used to be. He's making a lot of poor decisions, a lot of sloppy passes. Then he kind of cheats a little bit too, which once you start cheating, you know that you're not doing the right things. Now, Dean Evason hasn't seen it our way, which again frustrates me. But I mean, you got to figure out something to get him going. And Kirill's probably the missing factor, but I don't know. It just seems a little off with Matt's this season.
I will say you probably have, because of Kirill, you probably have gotten more out of Mats than what was anticipated when you signed him to that 5-year full no move contract too, by the way, from Paul Fenton, one of his last acts before getting axed. And you've gotten more out of him. Next year's the last year of his deal. I don't see a situation where he's re-signed. So I think as a whole, actually the signing has worked out, probably been better than we thought it was when he signed here 4 seasons ago. But he doesn't, without a legit superstar to play him with, he's a non-factor at this point. Like, he was really good with the Rangers as being that playmaker, and he's played in a ton of playoff games. But I think what you'll likely see is them write out this contract after next season. I mean, he has the full no move, so I don't see him necessarily going anywhere unless he wanted to waive it by the trade deadline next season or this summer. But he needs Kirill Kaprizov. He needs a superstar to feed into, because he's just not going to be someone that carries that line and carries production.
The thing that concerns me about him right now is this: he makes plays that lose playoff games. And I'm talking especially defensive zone miscues, which drive me crazy. But, you know, in the course of an 82 game season, they can hurt you, but they don't have to like undermine you. Right. But some of the stuff that he pulls, and it's just, you're right, like just careless. That's the type of stuff that can lose you a playoff game, and you can't get that sucker back. It's not like, oh, we just lost a playoff game, it's fine, right? So that's what concerns me. To Dex's point, here's my question. How important is Zuccarello's presence to Kaprizov's happiness too? Yeah. Because Matt's has, I will say this, he is a genius. He's the employee who's not that great, but sucks up to the right people. And now they're like, well, you can't fire Declan. I love Declan. And they're like, but what's he doing? And it's like, I love him. He can't. So I am curious, as Kaprizov's contract is ticking now itself, when it comes time for Mats to be gone, is Mats gone? Or are they like, we can't let go? Because, you know, Kaprizov's in a position of such strength here. Yeah. So it's going to be a very interesting, and, you know, Billy Guerin, to his credit, doesn't suffer fools. Like, there's no BS there. So my guess is he'd say, Kirill, sit down and shut up. Here's what I'm going to tell you. Nonetheless, it's an interesting question, but just in the short term, you know, you throw a puck away in the third period of a 1-goal playoff game, and I'll tell you, that puck is going to end up in your net, and now you're screwed. So that's my concern with Mats.
Well, I've been saying for all season long, you need to get him another Russian. Every game that Minnesota plays against a team that has a Russian, Kirill's there chatting with them. Like, he misses that. He wants that connection. And that's been an ongoing league-wide thing, right? Like, the Russians are happier when they have another Russian with them. Zuccarello was a stand-in. So I think if you get rid of Zuccarello, you got to bring another Ruski over and have that be that to keep.
Well, they got the kid, right?
You're right. Yes, that's right. There is one.
The center. Yeah. I can't pronounce his name to save my life.
I was almost said Kuznetsov. It's not Kuznetsov, but
that's as close as we're all going to get. Yeah, I think Kuznetsov. But
the pronunciation is the actual pronunciation is not hard, but the way it's spelled, you would never get the pronunciation unless you've actually got it phonetically there, which I don't have right now. So I'll just say that kid, if he can make the team, could help Kirill Kaprizov.
Perfect.
Why didn't he just go and sharpen that name? Like, sharpen his knives, like our friends from My Dull Knives, okay? Sharpen the hard K, the Smith. Yeah, I mean, I'm a Declan, for God's sakes. Like, my name's kind of, it's getting a little more popular, so I think people are getting it right. But people used to butcher it and have it too sharp, and, you know, Declan, Declan, Dacian. Everyone couldn't read it right. Now it's Declan. Now it's Declan, and they get it right. But I also, because of the nice friends at My Dull Knives and Vivront, our knives are nice and sharpened. And if you have dull knives, go to mydullknives.com to get those knives sharpened. You can send them in on a safe kit. You can stop it in Wyzetta, go to Vivront, and go check out mydullknives.com.
Okay, back-to-back losses. 0-1-1 against the Golden Knights. They lost on Saturday. They came back and lost in a shootout on Monday, as Dean Evison so properly called it, the stupid shootout, which I agree completely with. What's your assessment of this team's play right now, Jessi?
Monday's loss was disappointing, but I thought they played fairly well. I think they took advantage of Vegas's mistakes. They certainly looked a lot better than they did when they were in Vegas, without question. And that's not just score related, just in general. They were much more in touch, much more in tune. I mean, I personally blame Patrick Royce for that overtime loss because he had said that they were going to go into overtime and it was going to be a 4-3 score. He did pick the home team when I asked him, but it's probably Royce's fault somehow or another. No, but I think the Wild are playing still really good hockey at the right time. Again, chatting with them after practice today, each one of them, Marcus Foligno, Boldy, Fleury, said they're going for that number one spot in the Central. So you can imagine that they're going to come out guns a-blazing, doing their best, while trying to maybe play it safe as well, because you don't want to get injuries. But, they start with a tough one in Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh's a desperate team, still clawing their way, trying to get into the wild card race. So that's going to be a tough one. But, looking ahead, it's a very winnable schedule for Minnesota, at least on paper. So I think they're playing the right kind of hockey they need to do to hopefully potentially hang another banner, another division championship banner up at the X.
Yeah, I thought they looked a lot better, but it just stunk because I thought after Vegas scored the first goal that they played really well in the second. They played really well up into the third until the last minute with the extra attacker pulled and Vegas cashes in. And you left a point on the board. You left a chance to still probably maybe even get the top seed in the conference. So a lot better game overall and a lot better play from the Wild, but it was still a little lackluster that you had basically 2 points right there against the clock and they weren't able to close the deal.
I thought the loss on Saturday was super instructive because they actually didn't play a terrible game, but they tried to play in that game. I thought too much of the Golden Knights game. And I think the Golden Knights are a better team. Mm-hmm. And so like the Wild, again, the only thing, because I actually think that this team is well coached and it's not a unlikable group of me first type of guys. But on Saturday, I thought they got lulled into, we're going to show our skill too. And so like they played an okay game and I got notes because I tweeted that and folks were like, no, they played great. What are you talking about? They just lost. And I said, no, that type of game in a playoff game, they will lose against the Colorado, which by the way, was a marvelous game. Now the thing where I will tie, because I thought the Monday performance was really good. And I thought that they dictated the play a lot, which I liked. Again, they need to play a heavy game. That doesn't mean they can't skate, but they need to be in control of the flow. And I felt on Monday that they were. Mm-hmm. The two similarities that I see that are playoff concerning, and it seems small, but it's going to be important, are the Avalanche game and Monday night's game. You go into that third period, we have a lead, we're going to hold on. And I don't know what the happy medium is exactly, Jessi, but there is one. I'm not suggesting that you try and go offense, but their forecheck when it's going well is so good. I don't think that you can go into what looks like a prevent defense. And Dex and I discussed this post-game Monday as well. So I think the one thing that Dean has to emphasize, because it almost cost them against the Avs as well, because the Avs took it to them in that third period, is let's not be irresponsible, but we have to push the play more. And we can't just spend the entire period holding on by our breezers in our own zone.
I would completely agree. And you've seen that happen numerous times where it's funny. Last year, third period was everything for Minnesota. This year, they kind of go into that shell. And I mean, part of that's probably the confidence in their goaltender. And thankfully, they've got two really good goaltenders that have helped them out in more instances than not. But you're absolutely right. For whatever reason, they take their foot off the gas and get too comfortable. And their forecheck is absolutely phenomenal. The way that they can push the pace, and you saw this against Vegas the other night at home, is when they're in control, they have complete control, and they're playing smart hockey. They're not playing the cutesy hockey. I think that's the other problem is, yes, I think when they shell up, it's because they are worried they're going to make a terrible pass because they're too excited or they're too much going into it is kind of my question. But yeah, like, I think you're going to have to play. I mean, ultimately, and again, it sounds stupid, you have to play a full 60, right? Like, you have to play a full 60. There is no letting off the gas in any situation come playoff time. Now, obviously, you're probably not going to be lucky enough to get a huge lead during the playoffs, right? That you would even consider sitting back, but you can't. I mean, this team cannot. And that comes not just from Dean, but Jared Spurgeon and Marcus Foligno and Matt Dumba. They need to be sure that they're relaying that message to other guys, especially to those young guys, because I'm sure the young guys throughout their careers have maybe been taught that way, right? Because that is a part of hockey as well, is to know when to protect your lead. So that could be a change of mentality for some of those younger players, especially as they are experiencing kind of the newness of playoffs in their careers.
Yeah, I just want to see them play more of a sound game too, and hopefully that they don't get too cute, or not get too cute, but overcompensate for their lack of skill and get away from the identity that Judd loved to talk about. So if they play up to how they're supposed to play, I think they can go toe-to-toe with most teams in the playoffs, whether that's Dallas or Colorado. We'll see who they draw, but I think they, in general, look a lot better, and when they play up to their standards, they can beat just about anyone.
And I think the big difference here in going into or attempting to go into that prevent defense is this. In 2003, you could do that in the third period because at that time you could trap, you could hook, you could hold, and you could basically slow the game down to a very slow pace, right? And it worked. The rules now, thank God, don't allow that. And so like when you go into that prevent, you're leaving yourself no option to really just shut things down, because, you know, that goal, that tying goal by the Golden Knights in the third period on Monday is a prime example. That type of thing is going to happen. And if the puck's in your zone, it is going to happen for sure. I mean, Jack Eichel made a play that was phenomenal to get that puck out front. And as Dean said, the problem then is, because I think he was actually passing it, Jessi, to Carlson, who got a piece of it because he got the first assist and then tipped it back to the kid that scored the goal. So there's like no way, and you can't grab that guy now. You know, back in the old days, you could grab that guy, you could interfere with him, and they wouldn't call it. So, yeah, I think that's the fine line here. But it's going to be interesting to see. And as you said, they've got what? They've got Pittsburgh left to Pittsburgh, St. Louis here at the Blackhawks, the Jets. That could be interesting. And then the Predators. Jessi, thanks much. We will talk to you next Wednesday. Declan, we'll be back soon for more Judd's Hockey Show. Appreciate you checking us out, and follow along.
Yeah, hit that subscribe button for daily Minnesota sports entertainment. Judd's Hockey will be ready to rock in the playoffs with Wild fans on Ventline too. So get ready for that here in a couple weeks, and we'll be back very soon.
You know, there's no room for petty bull.